Hello. It's the one and only. It's 5D Transformations. And I really want to bring some powerful information to you today. And I'm excited about this one because this is one that I've wanted to talk about. And my favorite videos are the ones where I learn from them as I talk to you as well. So it's almost like I'm channeling information to you, and I'm learning it as it's coming out of my mouth, So with that, this is a video on introverted feeling versus introverted thinking. And these are two of your primary introverted processing functions. Now you have your perception functions, which is how you view what you view, right? You have your sensory things that you look at, which is, for example, you may be looking at me right now. You may be looking at a TV, looking at your phone. That's the sensory stuff that you're looking at. Intuition is also a perceptive thing because the ideas that come to your mind, you look at them, certain ideas pop up and then you evaluate them. But before you think about them or have any feeling about them, you first have to see the image. And that's what intuition is all about. It's the images. Sensing is all about the physical images that you're seeing. Intuition is all about the mental images that you're seeing. They go hand in hand because you can't really have any mental images without first having a reference point in the physical. So you can imagine an apple only because there's a physical apple that exists. You can't really imagine something that doesn't exist. All you can really do is take something that exists in the physical and alter it. You might imagine an apple flying with the face or something, but all you did was just take an apple, a face you've seen, and wings that you've seen, and put them all together to create this new creature, or whatever it is. So that's essentially what's going on the perceptive side. But when you're seeing all of these things, we add judgment and values to these things. We give it names, we give it a character, and then we go from there, and that's how we're able to think and feel about things. So you may feel a certain way about a dragon. Some of you might like a dragon. Some of you might be afraid of a dragon. That's all based on how you process that image. Some people like the idea of school. Some people don't. It's all about how they process the idea of school, right? And this is big because school in and of itself, or a dragon in and of itself, they're just images. They're just things. There's really no feeling or really thoughts associated with them. They just do what they do. Like a bird's gonna do what a bird's gonna do. It's gonna fly and blah, blah, blah. But once we create the word fly and create an idea of what a bird does and study a bird and apply thoughts and judgments and then people also associate feelings with birds. Some people like birds, some people don't, right? Now we're using our processing functions. This is how we come to judgments. Otherwise, the stimuli that we look at has no meaning. We apply the meaning to it. So that's something I want to take the time to explain because that's something that's important to understand. Life is just life. When you look at animals, I think what separates us from animals is that we have the ability to think and put judgments on things. Animals more so like your standard animals, because I guess we're all animals technically of some sort, but they don't really judge or have like a narrative behind things. They're feeling things out. Now, here's my theory. I believe that sensing and feeling are the two primal functions. And they kind of work like yin and yang. Like the yin is the feeling. It's how I feel about things going on. And all animals feel. We all feel things. Like a dog is operating off pure feeling. A cat operates off of feeling. Not to say that they don't think. They definitely think, but it's more feeling based. So, for example, they can feel a predator coming, so they run, right? They'll feel hungry, so then they'll chase prey, right? There's no factor of, oh man, was it nice that I ate this animal and killed it? Is it nice that I ate a fellow animal? I've literally seen chickens, or not chickens, but I've literally seen birds eating like chicken on the floor. And it's like, man, you're like a cannibal, right? But they don't view it like that. They don't view it as, oh, I'm a cannibal. They don't care. They're just operating from feeling. They're hungry. This is meat or whatever, and they eat it. But then it's sensory also. These animals are very sensory. And in my opinion, they have hyper sensing. And you'll notice that people who have extroverted sensing as a higher function are more primal in nature. Like they have more of a primal function. These people tend to be the type that have gotten in more fights, that kind of live more the bad boy edge. They like to more so use their body and their hands and their physicality, because I think that sensing is a primal function. I think sensing goes back centuries to the apes and orangutans and those older humanoid species. They operate from sensing, and so do animals. Dogs have sensing at a very high level. They can sniff. Sensing is nothing but the five senses. If you're an extroverted sensor, you just make your judgments based on, or if you have more extroverted sensing, you make your judgments based on what you can taste, touch, smell, see. You're not really big on making decisions based off of an idea or a continual pattern that you're noticing that isn't physically there in front of you. You have the capacity to do that because you have intuition, but you tend to rely on the things you can see, taste, touch. That way it's not left up to interpretation. And that's something that's primal. And I think that's something that's one of the older functions. And I think feeling is one of the older functions. So if you see an animal, long story short, they're operating from sensing and feeling. Now, I think the functions that separate humans from animals, the more evolved functions, are going to be your thinking function and your intuition, your intuitive functions. Because thinking now is taking the things that you've seen and putting them together in a way to solve something, to figure something out, to make sense of what's going on, separate from just how you feel. Intuition is also goes hand in hand with thinking, because you can only really your thinking is predicated on data. The more data that you have, the better thoughts you can create and decisions you can make. Intuition is literally looking at sensory activity and keeping them, and having and remembering them so that you can have an idea of what's going to happen in the future. So if you see a coconut, always fall down this particular area, then after a while you're like, but then you notice, let's say it always falls in a certain area during the summertime, but you notice during the wintertime it's not there. If you didn't have intuition, you would continue to go, you'd be like, man, when is it coming back? And you wouldn't know. You would just walk back up to the tree all the time and it ain't there. Intuition will say, I noticed that it's not there during the winter, but it's there during the summer, so that means that during the summer I'm gonna come here to get them, and during the winter they're not gonna be there because I see the pattern, and that will cause you to move, you'll move in that direction because of that information. So what separates us from animals is we're able to apply thinking at a higher level, and we have a higher level of intuition that puts us in a position where we have the ability to critically think. Now, with all of that being said, let's really talk about thinking and introverted thinking and introverted feeling finally. Now, I'm going to start with introverted feeling, and then I'm going to get to introverted thinking, which is what I really want to talk about anyways. Introverted feeling is a deep inner sense in your core of emotion and of emotional intelligence. Here's what I mean. You have the ability to know how other people will feel about something because of how you feel, which causes you to operate in a way to give people the optimal feeling experience. Or on the flip side, if you feel negative, you know how to trigger in somebody the same negativity that's going to make them feel how you feel. In the case where you feel attacked or somebody's doing something that you don't like, that's why it's considered emotional intelligence function. Now, what's so funny is introverted feeling, if the higher you have introverted feeling, the lower you have introverted thinking. And then the higher you have introverted thinking, the lower you have introverted feeling. So don't you love duality? Don't you love the world we're in? Yea, day and night, water and fire. This is 5D transformations, right? This is why I love MBTI. This is why I talk about it. Because it applies universal principles, the universal laws, natural law, in order to come to this science. So introverted feeling prioritizes the core of how I feel, because it learns at a young age that there's a high level of intelligence there in a variety of areas. Number one, they go through school. They notice certain kids get picked on. They might get picked on. So they're going to discover, what is it about myself that's causing me to get picked on? And they'll be sensitive to that energy. And as a result, they're able to be very hyper aware, figure out the things within themselves that are causing this, and they take more of an initiative and effort to figure those things out, which causes them to learn, okay, they made fun of me because of this. So that means I got to fix this or that, right? Because I don't like the feeling that I'm getting made fun of, right? And then what happens is, let's say they fix that problem. Then they might notice other people are going through that, and now they can resonate with those people because they've identified within themselves what was causing their situation, and now they can be of aid to somebody else going through that situation. Or they can have empathy for someone in that situation. Because nobody's going through a situation alone. We're all experiencing similar things, just different, just in different ways. So introverted feeling is building a database of all of these situations. When they feel really sad, when they feel really happy, they're identifying that. They're always hyper aware of what's going on in their emotional realm. Whereas for introverted thinking types, that's too much. That's too messy of a space to try to figure out. Introverted thinkers will rather figure out things that are practical and logical and that are not as chaotic internally. They'll rather figure out things that are chaotic externally, that they can observe, because they can clearly apply principles to external situations with logic that makes sense. Whereas feelings, you could tell somebody, let's say somebody's mom dies. All you can say from introverted thinker perspective is, I am sorry that your mom died. Is there anything I can do to help logically? That's all you can do. Feeling wise, it's like, what can I do? Well, introverted feelers might be like, well, man, let me do X, Y, Z, because I know when I experience deep pain, this is what I like, or this is a certain thing you can do to make them feel a little better. So what you'll notice is, between introverted thinking and introverted feeling, it's really just a matter of attention and where attention is going most of the time, from ages like 1 or 0 to ages like 13, when the personality is pretty much fully developed. They've put their energy in two different places. Introverted feelers have really been hyper focused on how they feel and how that is relative to the people around them. And some of them do it in a cool way, where they just are like the cool guy that know how to make everybody feel good, that knows how to manage their emotions, that are likable, that are still smart, because they still have extroverted thinking, which is just understanding external logics. So that'll help them, that's why a lot of people with extroverted thinking can get through school, and they're really good at that, because they're able to learn the external logic that everyone's created already. It's pretty easy for them to pick up on it. And then they just manage their feelings and try to manage the feelings of people around them. But they're sensitive to certain things. They don't just say the first thing that comes to their mind. They try to, unless they're comfortable with somebody, but they try to keep people's feelings into account. They at least try to. They tend to be very nice people, kind of like pushovers in a lot of cases. And the reason why they're pushovers is just because they're trying to manage the feelings of other people. They don't want to step on other people's toes because they don't like people stepping on their toes. Introverted feeling is they are very much integrated with how they feel about things. They know how they feel about things. So they don't really care to delve into how the group feels, because they know how they feel. They're not the type that want to be around family all the time and talk about, how the group feels. Or they're the types to really, stick to what they feel. They're not going to just go with the group. The group feels this way about these certain rights. They might be like, well, I'm going to view the logic objectively. I'm not just going to jump in and feel like how everybody else feels because that's the popular thing to do. I feel, I want to figure it out for myself. So they're not really swayed as much by the group's feelings. So it's hard to really peer pressure them into feeling like how others should feel, or shame them, because they have a very close relationship with their feelings, and they feel violated if they have to compromise how they feel in order to make other people happy. Introverted thinking isn't really worried about making other people happy, but they're also not really worried about making themselves feel really happy, because they would like to, but that's not a priority. The priority is, what is the best logic to do right now? Introverted thinking is moment-to-moment thinking. See, in order to use introverted feeling, you have to factor in a lot of different logics. That's why you have to use extroverted thinking. You got to think about how you think about the situation, how they might think about the situation, and then come up with a way to make both parties comfortable so that your introverted feeling stays intact, right? So in order to have introverted feeling, you have to manage different thoughts, because you might say a thought that offends somebody, and now they don't feel good, and now you feel that in the environment, and it affects your feeling. So you're trying to manage your feeling by managing everyone else's extroverted thinking, like, you know, or more so by managing what you say so that the thoughts don't affect people a certain way. Introverted thinking, they're gonna say what they think is the most accurate thing in the moment, because there's not as much attention on the feeling of the environment. You know, so they might say something like, man, like, those shoes, why are you wearing those shoes? And that might hurt somebody's feelings because they might have just bought the shoes, right? But they're not saying it to be rude. They're just trying to really figure out why you buy those shoes. You know? Like, it doesn't really matter how you feel about it, because that's just the question. We're trying to get to the accuracy of why you get the shoes. So, introverted thinking is moment-to-moment analyzing, right? Now, introverted thinkers are very powerful, because if you're paying attention to stuff moment to moment, wouldn't that make you really good at certain things? For example, like engineering, building, because that requires you to focus moment to moment, one step at a time. Introverted thinking doesn't like to jump steps. You know, like for introverted feeling, you have to jump steps to try to manage people's feelings, because introverted thinker would be like, man, how do I even know how they want to feel? Like, that's skipping steps. Let's just focus on the task at hand, and feelings will figure themselves out. Introverted thinking is moment-to-moment solving. It gets a rush. A way I've described it in the past is like paying attention to something and keeping your attention on it in a linear fashion and not getting your attention off of it. Because the longer that you pay attention to something, the more data you get. You know, like if I look at a water bottle, right? And I read the back of the water bottle, I see the ingredients. It's just water, calcium, chloride, sodium, bicarbonate. Then I might look and say, okay, it's a blue, thing on here. That's the logo. It's blue. It's purified water with flavor enhancing materials, great value. And let me look at the design of this. I'm looking at the design, and it has like a certain design to it. It's like, did they do that to hold, so that it's more comfortable? It has a better grip. And now, as I'm doing this, I'm not worried about how anybody feels. I'm not worried about how I feel. I'm just observing the design of this. And I'm getting data. And I could use this data for myself in the future for something. Let's say I might want to design something. Or let's say I noticed something. I can apply the things that I saw with my introverted thinking, observing the different data of this thing, and I could apply it to something else. Now imagine if you do that every day, all day, with a bunch of different stuff. What you'll have is like a whole mechanism of data that can be applied based on moment-to-moment observation. What you'll notice is where attention goes, energy flows. Where your awareness sits and can focus, you'll be able to solve that thing. Kind of like if I want to build something, all I got to do is focus on it long enough to come up with the answers on how to build it. Introverted thinking likes to focus on one thing at a time. It doesn't like to go outside of that, because that's going to compromise the linear structure of whatever it's focusing on or building. So of course it can still take in ideas and things like that, but introverted thinking is kind of like one step at a time. It likes to observe. It likes to experience things and take in more information. Okay? So this is the part one. Part two, I'm gonna now dive deeper and get technical a little bit more and start really breaking down some key differences and how introverted thinking and introverted feeling operate for the individual that's experiencing the functions. Talk soon.